Well, welcome everybody. Good evening and welcome to the August 2024 ASIG General Meeting. Before we start, I've been asked to make a couple of mentions. Dylan, this one's for you in particular. Alex Wizzy wanted to say hello to Dylan and sorry that she couldn't make it. Alex is a science journalist with an emphasis on astronomy and part of the team who produced the well-known Annals of Deep Sky publication. So
nice.
She sends her regrets. We also have Mike Shipman joining us. Mike is known for his blue planet photography, art from Earth, and has recently joined DAS. So welcome, Mike. We also have the president of DAS, Doug Trooks, with us, and Doug's an astrophotographer, and along with the previous president, Dina McClung. So welcome, everybody. Enjoy the meeting. I will hand it over to Richard, who is going to talk quickly about his trip to Australia and then introduce our special guest.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot, Greg. If you can put those couple of slides up, I have.
Yeah.
So I saw it was actually the YouTube blurb that Dylan put out about StarStuff 3, and I'd never even heard of StarStuff 1 or 2. But once I saw that, my wife and I had always wanted to go to Australia for a little bit of a vacation, and so this became the seed of everything that allowed us to get there for about 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. So the StarStuff 3 was held at a beautiful resort, Elements of Byron Bay. There's a photograph of that, the largest one there that has, you can sort of see where the pool and the conference center is, but then back in those trees, there's just all sorts of little cabins, if you will, little townhouses, little places, single individual units that you can stay in, and we stayed in one of those. It was beautiful, very tropical. Unfortunately, the skies weren't clear when we were there, and we had a little bit of rain, but it was a beautiful time. So it was a one-day event on July 6th. It was, of course, a new moon. If the skies were clear, I think there were plans to have, a nice opportunity to look at the stars. They had a little small sponsor vendor area, which was great. I think there was around 300 attendees. Is that right, Dylan? Was it 300 or so?
It's probably closer to about 370 in the room, all up.
Okay. Yeah. So a decent size, and almost all were from Australia. I think I was the only one from the U.S., and there were a few people from New Zealand. But other than that, I think, and of course Trevor from Canada. But everyone else was from Australia, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an all-day meeting. It was a series of talks. I'll go over sort of real quick what they were in a second, with some Q&As mixed in, and some really neat giveaways from QHY, which was, I didn't win any, so I thought at least I'd get something for coming from the U.S., but that's okay. I have an ASI Air, so it wouldn't have done me any good. So, and Trevor Jones of Astro Backyard was the special guest. He gave a talk towards the end that was really interesting. And then after the whole conference, they had a VIP dinner, which was, as we talked about a little while ago, which was a sort of a Hot Ones takeoff, where Dylan was interviewing Trevor about various things in both their YouTube careers, as well as just astrophotography in general and just life in general, really. It was really interesting. All that is on YouTube, on Dylan's channel. And as he said before, maybe he's going to put together a higher quality one out there. But that was really interesting, I thought. Actually, I learned a couple of things during that. So all in all, it was a really great event. Just the next slide just kind of shows sort of the breakdown of the talks that they had. The first one was a local a guy from the Port Macquarie Observatory. A fascinating history of what sort of work has gone on there at the observatory, building it originally like many years ago, and then upgrading it most recently in the last 5 years. There was an interesting talk by Annie Handmar of Optus. Optus is a satellite communication company. They have satellites that are basically bringing all the data into Australia, as far as I can tell, but a lot of it at least. And her talk was on a bunch of interesting things you didn't know about satellites. Almost an apology for all the satellite noise that we see in our astrophotography, but it was an interest. Go ahead.
No, I was just laughing.
Yeah, no, it was an interesting talk. Then Dylan gave a fascinating talk. I didn't realize, Dylan, that you're writing a book, 101 Things to Do with a Telescope Before You Die. Of course, I found the number one thing to do, the most interesting, which is, what was it, Dylan?
The first one?
The first one, yeah.
Yeah, spying your neighbors.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've all done that. So that was an interesting talk, and I also found it very interesting because I'm sort of into writing things as well. I'm into music and writing musicals and things. And one of the interesting things you said was about writing drunk, editing sober. I thought that was really good advice. So that stuck with me. So it's weird the things you take away. Terry Lovejoy, who is the discoverer of many comets, gave a really good talk on his career and how he got interested in this and how he used used satellites like SOHO, which was not designed necessarily to discover comets, but he used it to find comets that were approaching the sun and orbiting around the sun, quickly going around it and stuff. So that was a really interesting talk I enjoyed. Kristen Banks was an extremely dynamic speaker. She's a recent PhD. She gave a talk on red giant imposters, which I found fascinating. The most interesting talk for me was Professor Lisa Harvey Smith. She's a radio astronomer who is involved in developing radio astronomy techniques as well as systems. Like she's down in, where was she from? In Melbourne, I think, or
Tasmania, actually.
Tasmania.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was she's like a PI on developing some radio astronomy stuff with NASA and other international groups they have a system that has some telescopes in Australia as well as South Africa, and they're doing interferometry. And that was sort of my background in radar, was doing radar interferometry. So I found that very, very interesting. Professor Dwayne Hamaker gave an interesting talk on astronomy within some of the ancient cultures. And this is something I found really interesting all over my trip in Australia, was how important it was to acknowledge the indigenous people in Australia. And with not just astronomy, but everywhere I went, every tour I took in Cairns, they talked about the locals. And when my wife and I went to the Sydney Opera House and saw a show there, and the initial discussion was about the importance of the indigenous people in that area. And even you, Dylan, at your presentation was that's how you kind of led off, was how important and how much we appreciate the indigenous people. And that's something we don't see so much in this country, but since I came back and I was talking to some people about that, they told me that a lot of the local high schools are doing that now, acknowledging the importance of the indigenous people of the Americas. So that was kind of interesting. And then finally, Trevor Jones gave a really interesting talk about becoming an astrophotographer and how he loves to share his love of the hobby with everyone on his YouTube channel. I thought the most interesting thing there, and I think everyone would agree with me, actually, it was at the meeting, was somebody asked the question of, we all have significant others that kind of go along with us for this journey and kind of shake their heads and nod their heads and say, yes, that's wonderful what you're doing. But, Ashley, Trevor's wife, seems to be much more involved in that. And she gave a really good, somebody asked, why do you do that? And how do you feel about this? And she gave a really good, perhaps the highlight kind of the whole show, kind of from the heart discussion about, why she does what she does and how she likes to share this love with her husband. So that was really good, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was basically the talks, and then there was a VIP dinner after that, which I didn't go to. I went to a steakhouse in Byron Bay. I forget the name of it, but you probably know it, Trevor. I mean,
Ember.
Dylan. Ember, yeah, Ember, exactly. That's where I went. It was very good. But the Hot Ones video that they did there is on Dylan's YouTube channel, and I recommend everyone watch it. It's kind of interesting, and so that was basically a summary of the discussion. So I think what we wanted to do is kind of open it up here and see if anybody had any questions for Dylan or discussions that we might want to go to. I'd ask everyone to kind of keep it on mute and just raise your hand on using the Zoom raise hand function there. And I think Greg will be able to acknowledge the speakers. So does anybody have any questions? I can start off with a question if that maybe is the right thing to do here, Dylan.
Well, I will say one thing. It is pretty common in the culture for wives to get the raw end of the deal with some of the jokes that people make about, you know, hiding your telescope from the wife or whatever, or not getting permission to buy a new telescope or whatever. But my wife is extremely supportive of my hobby, and so is Ash. And I think we don't give them enough credit for the support they give us for being the nerds that we are. And on the point of the acknowledgement of the Indigenous history and Indigenous astronomy, it is interesting to hear an outsider say that, because it does at times feel very like we haven't done enough to address the racism and the ongoing sort of anxiety between the Indigenous culture here and Australia. And I think part of that is to do with the fact that for you guys, it's very far in the past, and for us in Australia, it's only about 200 years ago that the country was invaded and taken over. So that's very, very recent. There are people with great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers who aren't that far removed from the actual events. So it is a constant dialogue in our community of what's happening and how we move forward here. But let's talk about space and astronomy.
Well, no, Dylan, real quick, you know, it was the 1860s in the United States where there was lots of, 1870s even, lots of Indian in the U.S., what we called Indians and the native people, issues. You know, that's when Custer was massacred and all these sort of things. There was all sorts of things going on. So it's not that long ago. It's not that different, I would say, really.
Yeah.
It's something, like I say, I think we're starting to come to terms with, and it's just not, it's just starting to happen here.
Yeah, and from a space point of view, how I like to frame it, because I can really only talk to space, is that the one big thing we've done is erase the night sky, and that's something that we should at least make some reparations for.
Yeah, I would hope. I hope we would do that too, but I don't see that happening. Yeah. I will also point out that one picture there with the little bottles and the left there, that's the gift that I think you gave all this, or most of the speakers, that I really, you know, I'll be a speaker next time if I can get that. But it's the local distillery you have, where you have like various gins and different alcohols. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I tried to achieve with the event was that I make it really high energy, because I feel like when we go to a lot of astronomical conventions and societies, it can become really dull really quickly, which is not how I feel about the hobby. I'm super excited about space and astrophotography, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. So it's hard to describe in these slides here, but the music is pumping. The pace is really fast. Yeah. We are pretty loose. We're talking about alcohol. We're eating good food. Like, it's a real party, and it's in this beautiful tropical location, which was just fantastic. So I really encourage anyone who is putting together an event to just bring that energy to it, because we often get caught up in talking about gear and stuff, and we forget about connecting this to space as a whole and how awe-inspiring it can be.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a question from Dina. I think she had her hand up first. Go ahead, Dina.
Thank you, Greg. Well, first of all, I did want to say that last year we did do a land acknowledgement with people from some of the local Native American tribes at one of our general meetings. So that is something that we do feel at the Denver Astronomical Society is very important. That's something that I wanted to do for many years, and we were finally able to do it. And, you know, they were doing astronomy a long time before we were. And it's very important, I think, to incorporate what they can teach us, what they're willing to teach us into what we know, and to acknowledge their role into being our forerunners in the world of astronomy. So that's all I had to say on that topic.
Joe, thanks, Dina. Joe Pineda, you got your hand up.
Hi, Dylan. I just wanted to mention that I watched your YouTube videos early on in my progress in astrophotography. It's very impressive. I wanted to know, I heard you got a degree in astronomy, and I wondered, how did that change your view of astrophotography? What changed?
Yeah, like I was saying before, how we often get caught up in gear talk, and we forget that we're actually engaging with space directly. So doing this bachelor level degree in astronomy and astrophysics really helped cement my passion for it. And I found that I was coming home at night, because I was doing this at night, and I just got to read about space and really get stuck into it. Now, I know Trevor Jones doesn't go towards the scientific side as much. He's more passionate about the astrophotography stuff. And I'm passionate about astrophotography too, but I do like to connect it with a greater knowledge of space. I'm certainly no Carl Sagan or anything like that, but you'll notice in my videos I do like to mention stuff about the scientific value of our images and what we can pull out of our images, and what scientific fields of inquiry we can go into with our astrophotography skills as well, because it can go far beyond just pretty pictures. We can make actual contributions to the science. And Terry Lovejoy there, he did find telescopes in Soho, and people then latched onto that. But his great achievement wasn't using Soho, it was going into his backyard with his telescope and doing a nightly survey on every single clear night and blinking those images manually before there was software to do it, and finding comets that no one had ever found before. So now his name lives on in the annals of history as discovering, I think it's 6 or 7 Lovejoy comets, which will now be his name forever.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Joe.
We have a question in the chat, and it is from, I think it's from Paul Brooks. And he wants to know, did I hear you correctly? You are writing a book, and when should we look for it?
That's right. I have finished the book, but what happened was that I was writing it drunk and editing it sober. And so I think if you've watched my YouTube channel, you know that it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people find me quite crass, and I am self-aware enough to know that I can be not everyone's cup of tea. But you got to understand, in Australia, if someone walks into a room, if you introduce your friend to another person, you'll say, "Hey, come and meet Greg. Come here, Greg, you big prick." And that's just how we talk. And I'm not trying to talk down to the audience or anything like that, but it's actually a term of endearment, and it certainly rubs a few people the wrong way. So I wrote this book with my voice and being quite conversational. And when I reread it sober, I realized it comes across on the printed page as quite nasty, and my sarcasm doesn't really translate on the page. So the concept of this book is that people buy telescopes and then they sort of look at the moon and then they put it back in their closet and they never think about it again, or they go to sell it a month later because they haven't really engaged in the number of possibilities that you can unlock with a telescope. And it's not just about a list of 100 things, because there are plenty of lists out there with 100 things, 100 targets in the Northern Hemisphere, a Messier run or whatever. But my book is about 100 different things you can do with a telescope. And they're crazy things. It might be things from simple things like planetary imaging to connecting your Xbox game controller to the mount to control your telescope that way, or to do spectroscopy on the stars, or to do sky surveys and comet hunting, or to try and get the sodium tail of Mercury. I didn't include that one. That's a bonus one. But the fact that there's so much more to do with a telescope than just looking and snapping a photo. So I will keep you guys posted on how it goes. I'm hoping to maybe get Trevor Jones to write the foreword for the book and then pitch it to one more publisher. And if it gets rejected again, I'll publish it myself, and then I'll make all the money.
Thank you. Do we have a title for it?
Yeah, 101 things to do with a telescope before you die, because Amazon loves those listy titles, 101 things. And I obviously like to talk about death, so I had to slip that in there somewhere.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thanks.
Tommy, I think you got your hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Dylan. Question for you. Oh, actually, so your tagline. What is your sign off with your videos? Because we just talked about dying.
Yeah. Do you want to stop the slides so that people can see me responding? Because I've still got the slides up here on this screen.
Yeah.
Sure.
We can see you.
Oh, it's full screen because I've got the slides full screen.
Yeah. It's on, you're on the side, but yeah, we can see you.
Or just stop sharing, Greg.
Just stop sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, like I said, I'm not a Zoom person.
No, because if you stop sharing, then it'll go into conversation.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Then if you select speaker view, it's easier to see him.
Anyway, while you do that, g'day, Dylan from the
There
Byron
you
Bay
are.
Observatory here. I do have the same start and the same end to all videos because that's something I figured that YouTubers do. And so I had to think of this sign off about how I end the videos each time. And I decided to say, and remember, everything is meaningless and we're all going to die. And that is maybe an example of positive nihilism, but it's also a paraphrased quote from the Bible as well, which gets a lot of people really upset. A lot of Christians are like, my life has meaning. And a lot of people get in the comments and they're really angry that I've signed off saying everything is meaningless and we're all going to die. So I tell them the Bible chapter it's from, and then we have an argument in the comments. But my sign off, everything is meaningless, is not meant to be negative. In fact, I find it quite uplifting to know that we are not burdened by any kind of purpose, that we're meant to unlock something like a video game and figure it out. And so I try and live my life in just enjoying it and trying to be a nice person as well. So I'm trying to be nasty there, but some people really get worked up about it.
It's the greatest sign off of any YouTube video out there. So I
Oh,
love
good.
it. So also I was going to ask, where did your love for SCTs come from? And why is
Cassegrain telescopes?
Why is that your go-to? Other than you've got refractors, you've got reflectors like Newtonians, RCs.
Yeah.
Why the
Yeah.
SCTs?
Yeah. So initially, when I just had a bit of money and I walked into a shop and I was like, I'm going to buy a telescope. And you sort of have this image in your mind of the classic Galilean refractor telescope, but I was fascinated by the little Nexstar range because from what I could see, I could get closer to things. It had more magnification for this little stubby tube, and it wasn't the idea I had in my head of telescopes, but I thought, I'll give it a go. So I got the 4SE, and that was great for about a month before I figured, I need equatorial. I'm learning about the hobby. And so I saw that Chris Hadfield had gone up into space and taken with him a 9¼ Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope with Hyperstar. And I thought, man, if this consumer grade telescope is good enough for NASA to take on board the International Space Station, I need to know about it. This is something I can buy and put in my backyard. So I went out and I bought one, and I bought the same one that they had on the space station, which wasn't flattened, or at least it wasn't flattened natively. So then I upgraded that to the Edge HD version. And part of the appeal of that long focal length is that you can swap between Hyperstar and wide field, the really long focal length natively, but then add a magnifier and suddenly you're doing planets as well. So it's sort of like a one telescope can do everything kind of thing. And I upgraded to the C11, and I'm on this path, right, of just going through the Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes. So obviously the next thing that I'd like to get to is the C14. And if I get to the C14, I'm saving up for it right now, I will be able to Hyperstar that. So it's just like a RASA 36, like the really great 1.8 or 1.9 F number. And I'll be able to swap that and take the Hyperstar out and do planets at the level that people like Christopher Go and Damien Peach do planets at. So that's my ultimate goal for the observatory. I also, obviously, Schmidt-Cassegrains have their problems. You have things like the mirror flop and the tube temperature, trying to keep it stable when the temperature changes. And some of them have fans, and there's all sorts of different things to learn about Schmidt-Cassegrains. And I'm sort of going down that route instead of trying all the other different kinds of telescopes. But one thing I do like about them is the quality of the stars. The fact that the stars are just little pinpoints of light. I've always liked that. I don't like diffraction spikes. I used to think I did. And when I was getting my first images, I'm like, why don't they have these, pretty little spikes on them?
I don't think we could be friends, man. That's all I use is Newtonians.
I see
all
the
these
aesthetic value.
And all these guys give me crap for it, and gals. It's all good.
They can look really pretty, but now that I'm down the SCT rabbit hole, I'm just watch this space. Hopefully I'll get a C14 and I'll see what that unlocks.
What is the focal length with the C14 and the Hyperstar? Just do you know it off the top of your head?
I don't. I think it's close to, is it 800 or 1,000? Someone will have to Google that for me.
Okay, yeah, sounds about right. All right, that's all I had for you. Good to have you here, man.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Richard.
Yeah, thanks. So getting back to maybe a real astrophotography question in terms of technology, like you're connected with a lot of the companies and commercial groups that are doing this. I was really fascinated by your recent video on Mead going out of business and things. Just your awareness of that sort of thing which is lets everyone else become aware of it. But where do you see? What's the next piece of technology that you see having impact on amateur astrophotography? I mean, we've had these string wave guides or mounts, which are great, and the CMOS cameras seem to be getting better. Do you see any big jumps coming in the near future from any of the technology that's being developed? And I saw a talk by the guy in the narrowband channel. I can't remember his name, but he was talking about like one-shot color cameras where the CCDs like filter out. It doesn't have a bare pattern on it. The CCD or the CMOS sensor has a filter that will, you probably saw that. But anyway, where do you see things going? Yeah.
So firstly, I've got to say the Mead video is up. I took down the video about the lawsuit because there were some things that I was told behind the scenes that I'd said that aren't factually accurate in that lawsuit, and the lawsuit is still ongoing. So I won't comment on the lawsuit video, but the certainly there are some really rapid innovations happening in the technology, particularly with automatic telescopes and this all-in-one integrated system stuff like the ASI Air and Pegasus and Raspberry Pi based stuff. QHY is coming out with their own sort of response to that. I don't know anything about it yet, just that they've sort of teased at it on their channel, which I think might be a response to the whole ZWO ASI Air ecosystem. And I think their approach is going to be to make it open source and open platform so that you can start mixing and matching all of your hardware and still have the same benefits that ASI Air has. I would be surprised if Celestron don't have a response to that as well. I saw on LinkedIn the other day that Celestron have just hired a full-time software engineer from another company. I truly believe all of the innovation that's happening now and in the next little while will all be software based. It's all about how we integrate this software. If you think about the iPhone as a technology, that's a technology where we had all the moving parts. We had the camera, the internet, all of these things. It just took one guy to put them all together to make a device that changed the world. And so a lot of the innovation that I see, or what I'd like to see, is in software. Things are still a bit clunky. I'd really love to run Nina from my phone the same way that ASI Air users can run their rig from their phone as well. And I don't think that's a really hard thing to do. It should be someone who can develop a Nina plugin should be able to make a plugin that has a local web server that just pushes the whole interface for Nina through to your phone to control it that way. I don't think it's a hard thing to do, but it's all software innovation, not hardware innovation. The thing about the crystalline one-shot color innovation, which was that photons could come in and no matter what color they would register on a sensor so that it could unlock mono style quantum efficiency without the Bayer matrix. I looked into that and I couldn't see any evidence that this is a technology that's anywhere near affecting us at all.
Yeah.
It requires a complete rethink of the sensor. I don't think it will be used for astrophotography. I think there might be some industrial applications for it for color recognition and stuff like that. But I couldn't even do the back of the handkerchief maths to find that it would improve quantum efficiency at all. At the end of the day, it's still better to use a mono camera and put a whole red filter on that and get all of that red data and then a green filter and then a blue filter and get it separately. So yeah, but the short answer to the question is I think the innovation is all software based, at least at this point going forwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Leo, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, it was not a hand up. I was just applauding his statement about the software-based, being able to run Nina from your phone, etc. Because there's a lot of functionality there that I would love to have, but I don't want to be in bed with ZWO.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you a question. Dylan, we have a lot of people on here who are either very new, moderately new, and intermediate. We have a couple of real experts on here, but the vast majority of people are, beginner to intermediate. What would be your one piece of advice to somebody starting astrophotography? Something, because people lose interest really quickly. It can be tough. So, yeah,
I would say it's very easy, especially for me, to have this imposter syndrome. You go out and you look on Astrobin and stuff, and you just see images that are like crazy good. And you got to understand there are some people in this hobby who are spending like $100,000 on their rigs. They have remote observatories. They have $50,000 telescopes. Don't compare yourselves to those people. I still get joy from walking outside and snapping a quick photo of the Milky Way with my phone and just seeing what it looks like tonight. The joy of the hobby really comes from just these small victories that you have from image to image and figuring stuff out. It's a long process, and you can get really into the weeds with it. But have patience, have real patience. If it was a hobby that had instant gratification, no one would be in it. It's the fact that we do strive really hard to combat the weather, to combat the seeing, to combat the mechanical issues, the software issues to get where we are. You feel like you have these small victories to get to some of the images that we get to. If you like, I can just share a couple of my recent images.
Sure.
Let me see if I can present here. All right. Can you see that one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep, beautiful.
Stunning.
Thanks. This is the Centaurus A galaxy. I don't know. Can we zoom? Does that make it bigger for you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. One of the things I don't like about astrophotography in 2024 is that everyone's looking at our images on mobile phones, and it's so hard when you take a good image. It's hard to describe it to people online because you have to ask them to turn the brightness up on their phone, stop looking at these images during the day with the sun in their eyes, and not, the inability to zoom in to really see the detail. Because I know that I'm improving, but only because I can zoom in to see stuff. Like there's this little trail of hydrogen off the side here of the Centaurus A galaxy, and all of that nebula that was revealed with the hydrogen alpha filter that that you can't really notice when it's zoomed out on a mobile phone. Oh, here we go. Can you see that one?
Yeah.
Again, it's one that you can't really appreciate it until you get close up. So I'm going to zoom in, or I'm going to try to. Here we go. And you can see how much detail I was able to get. And this is the Omega Nebula, or the Swan Nebula. Can you guys see this from there? It is sort of around that core region.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool.
This is with your Edge HD 11.
Yes, that's right. So it's still a pretty tight field of view. I find that I can only do small targets these days because I'm not running the RASA right now, so I'm not doing a lot of wide field stuff. I'm doing stuff really zoomed in close.
So
you guys
Yeah,
know
see?
what this one is.
Size matters.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Was there another
Dylan,
question there? Yeah.
yeah, as far as what we can see or what we can image and get a decent amount of time on, I think is the Lagoon Nebula is probably our cutoff.
Right.
Depending on how far south you go in the States, but yeah.
Yeah. And M16 is one that you guys can see as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. And this is one I only realized that was in my field of view down here in the Southern Hemisphere, the cosmic bat. I forget its designation, but I've been really getting into these dark nebulas lately, and they're a real challenge for me. There's way more noise than I would normally get in my images, so there's a lot of cleanup after the fact, and they're really hard to process and really hard to color balance correctly. But I'm really fascinated by. Yeah.
Yes.
You need dark skies to get them in the first place.
Yeah, what Bortle sky are you doing?
I'm probably about Bortle 2.5 here on the edge of town. Yeah.
Okay.
In the middle of town's probably Bortle 7 because I'm very close to where Richard showed in the slide where you've got all the palm trees and the resort and stuff. I'm there, sort of on the edge of the earth and the edge of the town. So I've got a street light near me, which I don't know, it doesn't work for some reason. And thank God for that, because that plunges me into Bortle 2.5.
Did you buy a BB gun?
No, I think guns are more of an American strategy.
True, that's true. Good point. That's beautiful right there. What is
You
that?
did a video many years ago about using a laser, didn't you?
Yeah, I used to disable it with a laser. This is the Corona Australis Nebula. The designation is 26279 or something like that. I forget. But people are starting to call it Yoda's walking stick because of Yoda in there with his little walking stick. I got some blooming artifacts. I don't know what's happening with my camera, my 268M. But you can see there's a horizontal line coming straight out of the star. And the same thing happened down here with this bright star. So I'm not sure if that's something I'm doing wrong or if the camera has a dud resistor or something, but something I need to sort out. But this is very similar to Hubble's Variable Nebula, where Hubble's Variable Nebula has a shadow that bounces around on the inside of this funnel of nebula. And Yoda's eyes in here also have a variable nebula. The star itself, which is Yoda's right eye here, is a variable star with a period of 65 days, so it changes in brightness. And when it's at its peak brightness, it's sort of that light has an echo. So the light actually goes out at the speed of light and ripples over the rest of Yoda's head. It's something that can be captured with amateur equipment, but I haven't seen anyone produce like an animated GIF or anything like that. I've just read it in a scientific paper. They don't have animated GIFs in scientific papers. So hopefully someone can render the light echo with, consumer equipment, which would be cool. And this is a cometary globule. So it's sort of a nebula, a dark nebula that looks a little bit like a comet, but is not a comet. But again, really high noise profile. The denoise tools did a lot of the heavy lifting here, but just nice to see that that blue reflection nebula inside the dark nebula. And that's all I got for you. So I'll stop presenting.
Cool.
Well, thank you for making us jealous of your southern targets.
Yeah, thanks for making me feel inadequate. I appreciate that.
I'm glad you like them, and I'm happy to stick around and see some of yours as well.
Awesome. We had one more question. I think Joe Pineda had a question.
Yeah, so whenever I think of southern skies, I think of the clouds of Magellan. Do you ever do any imaging there, and are there things there that you find fascinating?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there, actually. Obviously, the Tarantula Nebula, and the clouds themselves are very odd looking things because they are galaxies, but they don't look like galaxies. They look really distorted. They're not very pretty targets, to be honest. They're very derpy looking galaxies. But there are a whole number of nebulas around the region that people sort of forget about. And so sometimes I'll go looking through the Nina framing wizard and just whiz that target around and look around for stuff that people aren't normally taking photos of. And you can find a lot of very strange looking nebula in there. But I like to call the Southern Magellan clouds the sort of old faithful, and that they're circumpolar, so that they're always sort of there. So when you run out of stuff, or there's stuff that you've done all the good targets for this part of the season, you sort of look over there and go, oh well, I guess I can do tarantula again. They're just always there.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Well, do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I think we'll get on to the slides because we've gone over time. So
yeah, cool. And thanks for letting me blab for so long.
that's why we had you here.